Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the 81 All Out podcast. As an introduction, I'm Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at Sidvi on Twitter, and I'm joined by two special guests from Dhaka. First, I'd like to introduce Rabeed Imam, who is the senior manager, media and communications of the Bangladesh Cricket Board, and who has also been a cricket journalist earlier in his life. Hello, Rabeed. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Siddharth. Hi.
Hi. And also from Dhaka, we have ESPNcricinfo's Bangladesh cricket correspondent and someone who has been on 81 All Out podcast before, Mohammad Isam. Isam, thanks again.
Thank you for inviting me to this podcast.
Thank you, and it's very gracious of you to thank me, because this is Isam's idea. He had messaged me and said that it would be very interesting to talk about Bangladesh cricket pre-test status, that is before 2000. And this is a fascinating topic because I have very little idea about it, and I'm sure many people don't really know much about Bangladesh cricket and what was happening in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So let me basically begin by telling you the little bit that I know about it, and all of it comes from Osman Samyuddin's wonderful book, The Unquiet Ones. Now, The Unquiet Ones is the history of cricket in Pakistan, and there Osman does write a bit about cricket in East Pakistan as it was in the 50s and 60s. So let me give you that brief 1-minute history, and that is pretty much all that I may contribute to this podcast. But let me start by saying that Pakistan was created in 1947 from India, and then there was the West Pakistan and East Pakistan. And through the 50s and 60s, cricket in Pakistan was almost entirely dominated by the Western side. Players who made it to the national team were all from the West, and almost all from the West. And even infrastructurally, in terms of cricket, club cricket, domestic cricket, everything was largely from the West. And that is because pre-independence, the University of Lahore and Northern Punjab and many parts of the Western Pakistan had already deep-rooted history of cricket and a cricketing culture going on. There basically have been only two players of note who Osman mentions in that history. One of them went on to play Test cricket for Pakistan, but he was not, from East Pakistan. I mean, he was born in India. He went on to East Pakistan, and then he played for them. I think his name was Niaz Ahmed Siddiqui, and he played for Pakistan. He played 2 tests, and then after that he moved on to West Pakistan. And then the other cricketer of note was a prodigy called Rakibul Hasan, who came very close to making his test debut in the late 60s and early 70s, but then he was the 12th man for a test against England, and then he did play an unofficial test for Pakistan in Dhaka. This was against a Commonwealth team, but this happened to be in 1971, and that was around when the student protests and the protests in East Pakistan were growing to a climax, and this was around when the war for freedom and independence, the call for freedom and independence was growing really loudly, and that match that Rakibul Hasan played actually had to be called off because the students protested. And so Rakibul Hasan then moved to Calcutta. He tried to play some cricket there, and then he went back to Bangladesh, as it was, the new country, and he made his international debut in 1985, which means like 14 years after he nearly came close to playing international cricket. Rakibul Hasan then played for Bangladesh in 1985 in a one-dayer. He played a lot of club cricket and through the 80s and even early 90s, and had an instrumental role to play in Bangladesh cricket administration. Now with that, let me take you over to Rabeed and Isam, and let's talk about Bangladesh cricket post 71 and the struggles that the board had to go through. And how was it? Can you just tell us a bit about the landscape of how cricket was just after gaining independence?
Well, as you have very correctly said, that the post-independence cricket was very far from the priority in terms of what was needed for just a liberated country. And whatever cricket was played before 1971, it was never as institutionalized or didn't have the infrastructure as the West Pakistanis had. And probably one of the major reasons for that was football was pretty much embedded in the sporting culture of the eastern side of Pakistan rather than cricket. But there were, as you have correctly mentioned, the names Rakibul Hassan and some other players who tried to actually make a mark in cricket and make it to the Pakistan main team. But all that actually changed because of the Liberation War, and cricket was not part of the agenda for maybe 4 or 5 years. Immediately after liberation, there were a lot of struggles, and all the cricketers who were playing in the pre-liberation period, they had to go into something different, maybe a career change for some. Those who stuck around, they actually started playing a little bit of cricket, and with the help of the British High Commission and some other NGOs and all the cricket lovers and the organizers of that time, cricket actually started making a comeback in the mid 70s.
Yeah, I think given how the popularity of cricket in Bangladesh now, it's easy to forget, as Isam has mentioned to me, that in the 70s, the cricket was nearly banned as a sport due to the extra cost, due to the extreme cost that it entailed post 71. Isam, what have you heard about that, and what have you researched about that period?
So this is really early. It's 1972, I think, when someone wanted to start a cricket league, restart the cricket league. Because look, in the 50s and 60s, there was always a league in progress, 5 teams, 6 teams, clubs like Mohammedan Sporting Club, Wadi Club, some of the other clubs were always in play. That league was going on, but it was halted because of the war. They wanted to restart it, but the Sporting Council said that they cannot do it because it's too expensive. Some of the prominent cricketers and coaches, they went on a march. They protested, and it was a symbolic thing at that time, but it drew the attention of the British High Commission, the Australian High Commission, and other NGOs, as Rabeed Bhai mentioned. And what happened afterwards was that they provided with bats and balls and stumps and other sort of pads and gloves. This is one part of history that we often forget, that products that we find in cricket stores in Bangladesh come from India and Pakistan. And initially, it was always Indian products that we saw, lots of bats, and then the Pakistani products started to come. So clubs were not too well off in those days, but they tried to pay the players. They tried to pay them 25 taka or 30 taka. I mean, that's what my understanding is, having heard from my father's friends and other ex-cricketers, that they made sure that players felt a little accountable of what they were doing. And then as it happens, that structure became the Dhaka League structure, and which has become so big in Bangladesh cricket.
The amount of money that Isam was talking about is basically nothing compared to what a professional cricketer would be getting. So it was 100% passion that actually drove those people, and because of them, because of their initial struggles, but their resilience, we now have a Test cricket team.
When there was league cricket, and even in the, I'm saying 60s and the 70s, after that period of the war, when it restarted, what was the interest like? And of course there was passion among there would have been passion among people, but when you compare it to, say, a football, I'm imagining that the stadiums would not have been as filled, or am I wrong? Were the stadiums like pretty packed even at that time?
Football was the game of the masses. Cricket was still a very elitist sport. Only the very educated and the people from the higher echelons of the society, it was their game. But in the 80s, people did come to the ground to watch matches being played, and one of the main reasons were that a lot of foreign players actually started playing in the Bangladesh domestic circuit in the Dhaka leagues. So there were players from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, India, and in the later stages in the 90s, we saw that there were Richard Illingworth and then Gus Logie, Neil Fairbrother. They came and played in Dhaka League cricket, and definitely the level of interest actually kept on growing.
Very interesting. I mean, any sport, when it is not as popular, when it's a second or third sport, needs the certain cricketers or certain superstar cricketers or heroes or whatever you can call them to keep the passion going. So, can you talk a bit about two or three cricketers? I mean, from the 70s, 80s, who were exceptional at that level?
Sid, I would say the first thing that brought crowds to the cricket was not any player but a contest, the Abahani Mohammedan contest. I think Rabeed bhai will also agree that it was before players. It was this contest, because in football it was always Abahani Mohammedan. From say around 1973-74, Abahani was a new club formed by the father of the nation's son, Sheikh Kamal. He formed Abahani. This was based in one part of town. Mohammedan was based in the commercial part of town, and they became instant rivals because of the players that drew top players, the football teams, I mean. And then these two teams had cricket teams as well, so automatically that rivalry was loaned to cricket. So say Abahani had Qazi Salahuddin, who's now the Bangladesh Football Federation chairman, but he was a huge star in the 70s. So they had him as their lead sort of captain of the football team. He was a legendary footballer. So who was there for cricket? So they found one guy. It was Jahangir Shah Badshah. He was a fast bowler. He was quite a colorful character back in the day. He played football as well. So he became a star for Abahani, for some of the other clubs. And then slowly, you had the likes of Rakib Hassan, who was a lifetime Mohammedan player. You had other people, other players being, pushed to that place where they became, a household name in a way that they wouldn't be recognized if they played for any other clubs. So that club versus club contest, that was what brought the crowds to cricket. That was what made cricket a little more popular in the 70s and 80s. Not even close to football, but it did grow. There was one match in the year, the Dhaka Derby, which it was the newspaper call it Abahani Mohammedan. So if the football one drew 40,000, this would be close, because both teams had their set of supporters, like die-hard, lifelong supporters like Liverpool or Man United. You had, set group of fans who would support Abahani in everything. Same goes for Mohammedan. From the early 80s, that's when the player sort of names start to come up. I think it started with Minhajul Abidin. Minhajul Abidin captained Bangladesh for a little while, but he was a top batsman in that era, and now he's the chief selector. So his generation started to push off those names like Akram Khan, Aminul Islam Bulbul. Slowly they came into the mid 80s, early 90s, and then you had allegiance. So Aminul Islam was Mohammedan, Akram Khan was a lifetime Abahani. This loyalty also made them pretty big names. On match days, I remember my uncles used to take me to certain matches, and it was war. It was, I think, if it was a weekday, I remember many of them happening on Thursdays or Fridays. So if it was a Thursday, which is a weekday here, offices used to be closed, because everyone was so excited. They wanted to go to the stadium. And I remember my uncles, because I also grew up in Dhanmondi, they would just stop doing everything that they would do, head off to the stadium. I think half of Dhanmondi would head off towards Dhaka Stadium, which was also close to where Mohammedan was based.
There was a lot of radio commentary in those days. Television, until the maybe we early 80s and mid 80s, television wasn't the main form of actually carrying this game on these games onto the remainder of the country. But radio commentary was very popular. There were a number of commentators who have actually gone into legendary status in Bangladesh's commentary history. Also, there would be a lot of coverage. There would be extreme coverage on in the media, and in those times it was basically the print media that would be following the games and following these rivalries. But I need to mention, we're talking about club cricket and all, but whenever a country actually cannot actually thrive or live on club sports, there has to be something that's coming from the national team. So whatever the national team was doing would actually later on in Bangladesh's cricket history would dictate how people would be viewing cricket. So in the early days, like in the late 70s, it was the ICC trophy where the Bangladesh team participated in. But we were not as good as maybe even Asian rivals like Malaysia, teams like Holland, Zimbabwe. All these teams, they used to beat Bangladesh, 8 out of 10 times. It started changing towards the late 80s when all these players like Akram Khan, Minhazul Abedin, Aminul Islam, Atar Ali Khan, all these players, they came in, and suddenly people started having a different kind of an ambition. Before that, ambition-wise, we were not quite there. And when that happened, people started believing that we could actually maybe qualify for the World Cup at some stage, especially in the 90s. And from there on, once Bangladesh actually qualified for the World Cup after winning the ICC trophy in 1997, cricket actually took a step that was, unimaginable maybe 15 years before that.
Yeah, I think the ICC trophy is an interesting point that you mentioned, because in 1979, and Bangladesh ended up, losing to Canada and Denmark. In 1982, as well, Bangladesh missed out by a very narrow margin in the knockouts, and then it took till 1997. Which we will come to, for them to, break that kind of barrier. I mean, so was there a sense of when these games happened and when the national team national team lost, was there a sense of disappointment? Was it big enough for people like you and Isam, who are following cricket, to feel extremely disappointed about it? Or how close was that followed?
Well, I started playing cricket when I was like 12, 10 or 12. And this was, I'm talking about the mid 80s. And as I was saying, we didn't actually have ambition wise, we didn't know where we were headed. I joined the Bangladesh Institute of Sports, which is called the BKSP, as a trainee of cricket. And we were about 30 of us who were there in the first batch of cricketers. And that was the first time there was institutionalized cricket coaching that was given in Bangladesh. But we stayed at the institution for 6 years, not knowing actually where we were headed, because in those times, the Bangladesh national team would be playing maybe 3-4 matches in a year. Australasia Cup, Asia Cup, stuff like that, but nothing more. And there will be the ICC trophy, but most of us would be actually dreaming of playing in the Dhaka Premier Division, Dhaka First Division leagues. Test cricket was far off from even we didn't even dream of Test cricket at that time. And the ICC Trophy disappointments, well, um, we were pretty certain that as long as Zimbabwe were there, it would be very difficult for Bangladesh to actually qualify for the World Cup. But then things changed. Zimbabwe got test status, and there were two teams that would be playing in the 1999 World Cup, and two qualifiers from the ICC Trophy. So there was a chance, and the Bangladesh Cricket Control Board, it was called the Cricket Control Board at that time. Cricket Control Board actually sensed that this would be the time where we can actually really push for a World Cup berth.
Bangladesh cricket, a lot of people would tell you that it was born out of a MCC tour in 1977. And then MCC used to come regularly, and you had teams like Hyderabad Blues, Ceylon, which became Sri Lanka later on. You had Omar Qureshi 11 coming to Bangladesh. Imran Khan came and played. And then in 1988, they hosted the Asia Cup as well. So those were efforts made by organizers in Bangladesh, like Ashraful Haq, who was the ACC CEO later on. He was one of the architects of these, tournaments coming to Bangladesh, these teams coming to Bangladesh. They would organize these tours, and that also generated a lot of interest. So by the time I was 10 or 11, I remember people saying that the '94 team was the best in Bangladesh's history. It went to Kenya, it lost badly, and then that '97, that little period between '94 and '97, I remember Bangladesh hosting 2 1-dayers against Pakistan. Not official, but Pakistan came here between two tours. That was a big event. Then they hosted a lot of SARC trophies. Like, they hosted a lot of cricket, and then they started to plan very well for the '97 ICC trophy. I remember Rabeed Bhai would obviously know this a lot better than me, but again, I remember that the '96-7 Dhaka Premier League was played on artificial mat as the playing surface, because they heard that that would be where the Malaysia matches, like the ICC Trophy matches in Malaysia, would be held on. So they imported a lot of these mats all over the country, all over Dhaka, making sure that all the players played on these mats. These were slow surfaces, didn't bounce too much, artificial sort of hockey mats. And that was the first time I saw that mat at the Bangabandhu Stadium or in Abohani Ground, where they played in these mats to acclimatize to Malaysian conditions. Um, Disappointment was always there, but there were building blocks. There was school cricket came up, BKSP came up, and then slowly all the things came together in the '97. It was the perfect storm. And I must add, I think Rabeed Bhai would be able to give us a little more idea. '97 was, according to the media at that time, according to players I knew at that time, my cousins used to play cricket, that was the worst team that went from Bangladesh. That was young, there was not a lot of good players, and it was the last sort of chance for the likes of Akram Khan, Aminul Islam, Atar Ali. Am I not right, Rabeed Bhai?
Yes, I mean some of the players who were some of them were very close to the end of their careers. They have left their best times behind, but I mean, just the fact that two teams are going to qualify from the ICC Trophy made a lot of difference. Kenya were considered as the main rivals. Bangladesh did, have some pretty tricky matches against Scotland and the USA, but Kenya were the main rivals, and everyone thought that if we can just play to our potential, we can be one of the two teams to qualify for the World Cup. And the cricket board also believed in that. And Gordon Greenwich was hired as the coach. There was a lot of intensive training that went on before the team actually traveled to Malaysia for the tournament. And there was a buzz there. All in all, it was not the best Bangladesh side that went to an international competition, but the belief, in terms of belief, I think that was they have the most confidence that they'll make it to the World Cup.
I wanted to come to this game a little later, but now that we're talking about it, we might as well continue. So, this was actually the first time that I saw Bangladeshi cricketers on TV. I'd never seen, I'd seen them in the Asia Cup, but, in 97 in Kuala Lumpur, it was almost as if in that final, it was like they were playing in Dhaka, in the heart of Dhaka. The kind of support that the team had in that ground that day, and of course, it was a tough situation for them because it had rained. And I think the Duckworth Lewis system actually really favored Kenya because Bangladesh had a pretty steep target to chase. But the atmosphere in that ground, and in India, we were getting, the commentary from probably ESPN Star Sports because I remember Harsha Bogle was one of the commentators there. And it was crazy. It was like I never imagined that cricket between two countries at that level would be so intense and so passionate. And that's the day I realized it. And tell us a bit about your memories of it. Where I guess you watched it on TV, or were you in Bangladesh? In Malaysia, Rabeed, for that?
No, I was listening on radio commentary, but the interesting thing was that both teams had already qualified. By the time they had reached the final, both teams had qualified for the World Cup. But that particular match, it was more of it was pride, and Bangladesh did not want to lose to Kenya, no matter what, because Kenya have been a thorn in the flesh for a long time. But that match had everything. And there was rain. I think it went to a second day maybe, and that was one of the highlights of Bangladesh cricket's achievements, because the whole country actually suddenly they realized that now we have a team that has qualified for the World Cup, because national team success actually that drives the sporting public or the fans. Football, everyone had invested their energy and passion in football for a very long time, and football did not actually deliver the results. We were not even regional champions. So when a team is cricket, maybe was the second most popular sport, and that cricket team had qualified for the World Cup. That meant a lot. And towards the late 90s, the crowd interest towards football started going down, and cricket became the main sport. In maybe 2-3 years, it was the sport that the Bangladeshi started following.
The two things that I clearly remember was, obviously I was at home. I followed. It was a 2-day game. Rabeed Bhai is right. It was played on the second day because there was rain. Bangladesh had to chase 160 odd in 25 overs. It was really hard to chase. We heard it on the radio. We saw the highlights later, and we pieced together what was going on. But a couple of things that always come to mind is the fact that it was the Bengali New Year the next day when they came back to Dhaka, and there was a huge sort of street party in the largest boulevard in Dhaka, where they were given a civic reception by the Prime Minister. There's so many things announced. I don't know whether they got it. They could fit it into their lifetime. There was land, there was car, cash. They were given a lot of things, and they were national heroes. But one small thing that comes to mind is I used to go to practice at a coaching center, cricket coaching, and it was very informal. 2 or 3 coaches were there, and they would run. I think 10 of us would go every day, and it was just huge struggle. We never got matches because we were only 8 or 9 on most days. So we used to play a school team who lent us 2 or 3 players. So cricket was really at the sort of, people would play football at the ground where I used to. It was called the Abohani ground, where the Abohani club was set. So every day, every evening, or 3 days a week, we used to go. My parents started losing interest. It was useless because, going there, waste of time. I could have done something else, they would have thought. So the day they won the ICC trophy, the next day I went. There were about 250 children at the ground with parents. And one guy came up to me and handed me a piece of paper and said, sign here. This is now a cricket coaching school. It is now all official. You'll have a jersey, a cap, and whatnot. And obviously, you need your parents' signature. Okay, I'll get the parents' signature. It, there was 250 on that day, and I remember by the time less than a year later, when I was practicing there, and I started to lose interest because there was no point practicing with 60, 70 kids in a small net, and and there was not enough space for everyone. I bowled to 25 batsmen one evening. Each batsman got maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes in the nets. It was mayhem. This is where Shahriar Nafis, Arafat Sani, all these cricketers came to cricket. They got that was the trigger. That was the day when Bangladesh cricket was actually born. I think it was 12th April 1997. Yeah, 12th or 13th April. It was mayhem everywhere in the country. You could see, you take a train ride across the country at that time as it is now, but it was like one huge dhamaka of cricket, and it just conquered everything.
Yeah, and it's like that match. I mean, it was 12th and 13th April. You're right, as you mentioned, and you would know because it's etched so vividly in your mind. Uh, Kenya batted first and scored 241 for 7 in 50 overs. Steve Tikolo, in fact, who was the man of the match, scored 147. 147 out of 241 is quite an effort, I must say. And for us, watching from India, for me, I was familiar with many of these Kenyan players because I'd seen them in the 1996 World Cup, and Odumbe, Tikolo, Odoyo, Asif Karim, all of them. But then it rained, and then Bangladesh had 166 to chase in 25 overs, which back in 1997, I must tell everyone, was a huge target. Like, 166 in a 20 over game today can be a winning total. But 166 in 25 overs back then was not easy at all. And then you had, I mean, I'm just looking at that scorecard now, but I do remember clearly Mohammad Rafiq coming in to open. And back then I had no idea about Mohammad Rafiq and his credentials. And then he came out to open, and he just made, I see he just made 26, and he hit 2 4s and 2 6s. But those shots were so spectacular, or at least I think they were so spectacular, that I somehow thought he made like an 80 or something that day. And there was something about like Mohammad Rafiq batting, right? Like anyone who's seen him bat will know that back the backlift and the swing, and the bat used to make some spectacular arcs as it came down. And then I'm just looking through that scorecard, and everyone obviously had to score really quickly because the target was such that. But Athar Ali Khan, who was one of the mainstays of their batting through the 80s and 90s, didn't even bat the day. And of course, now everyone knows Athar Ali Khan as the commentator and the voice of Bangladesh cricket. But the fact that he didn't bat sort of is a symbolic, right? That it's almost like it transitioned from the old guard to the new guard.
Yeah, it was planned apparently that he would bat. He would go to bat only when they had sort of probably the runs came below the number of balls, so that was not going to be possible in that sort of situation. So they kept sending the hitters, and he kept going back, and he couldn't bat. Like he was supposed to bat a number 10 or 11 by the time he was not going to bat. They sent Naimur Rahman and Mohammad Rafiq and everyone on top of the order, whoever could hit and swing the bat. And you mentioned Mohammad Rafiq. He's a cult. He has a cult following in Bangladesh, especially in the early test days. He would be one of those who would score some runs towards the end and give the crowd something to cheer about. But he also has one man. I think the 80 that you're thinking about, it's from a 98 Coca-Cola Trophy in India. There, Rafiq scored a 73 odd, I think, 70 odd. Very quick one with Athar Ali Khan. He had a big partnership. Bangladesh's first ODI win against Kenya, like all time, their first ever ODI win. It came against Kenya, and Rafiq obviously was the man of the match for his batting and bowling. He was just a different sort of cricketer. Rabeed Bhai must have met him many times as a reporter. I haven't.
Yeah, Rabeed, go on. I mean, I must mention here that if I have to pick my favorite Bangladesh cricketer, it would be Mohammad Rafiq. I found him enormously inspiring. I think his left arm spin has produced another 20 left arm spinners for Bangladesh, and his batting was so full of life. And I did also was fortunate enough to meet him, And I think Rabeed Bhai probably remembers that he was the translator that day when I met him and interviewed Mohammad Rafiq. And yeah, he's such a inspiring figure. And Rabeed Bhai, you must tell us a bit about him.
Before, we had Shakib, before we had Tamim and these players, the things he had achieved with the Bangladesh cricket team. 1,000 runs in Test cricket, 100 wickets, 1,000 runs in ODIs, 100 wickets. If you go back to that period of Bangladesh cricket, these are quite outstanding figures. But the person Rafiq was very difficult to actually understand what's going on inside. He'll appear as a very, very humble, very simple kind of guy, but that's not the way he, actually performs when he goes out there. He's very, very aggressive. He was probably the best hitter of the cricket ball when he was playing, and he was a very attacking bowler also, always on the wicket, always trying to get a wicket out of somewhere. And he was a bundle of energy. But if you sat with him and he started talking, it's his philosophy in life. It's so very simple. He doesn't complicate matters, and maybe that was one of the reasons he had a pretty long career. And even if you look at him nowadays, he looks the same. He comes down to carnival matches, weekend matches, sends down maybe 10 overs, like he had never left cricket. So that's the kind of person he is. He went on tours. He didn't need people around him. He was in his room, neat and tidy, going out, having his meals, having his lunch, dinner, whatever. He would be right there on time at training. He wouldn't bother anyone. He was a very, very easy person to deal with when he was in the team in terms of discipline and everything. If you don't understand how he began his cricket, where he has come from, then it can get a little bit difficult. But if you give him his space, give him his room, then Rafiq is a brilliant guy to have in the team.
Also, another cricketer, I think Isam, you can talk about him. You've written about him as well, who seems, at least for me, seems to have been quite a huge star in his playing times in the 80s and 90s, was Javed Omar. How big was Javed Omar, and can you talk a bit about the impact that he has on you?
He wasn't big. People hated him. And the piece was love to hate.
Yeah, hate to love. Yeah, yeah.
He was so important to Bangladesh cricket. I mean, we realize it now. People realize it now that you needed him around. But there were things about him that people were annoyed. He was talkative. He would grab your attention and try to keep it for a long time. He had a lot to say about opening the batting, how difficult it was. But opening the batting was difficult. If you just take it technically, like he faced some of the best fast bowlers during his time of playing Test cricket, 40 Test matches. But no one gave him credit for that. Like, he never gets the credit. I think only the cricketers who played with him understood his value, that he could play out the new ball, which Bangladesh needed badly, and still do. I think sometimes they still need a batsman who could grind it out. Honestly, he's a very interesting cricketer, and I met him in my childhood so many times. He was a schoolboy cricketer who did well, and he played for Bangladesh from 1995. But then he was really not picked for a long time because of his slow batting. They thought that he was good for Test cricket. They used to laugh at him, saying that you are only good for Test cricket. Then they became a Test playing nation, and they didn't pick him in the first Test match. They picked all the Rolls Royces and the BMWs over him. And then in Zimbabwe, the first tour, he came really good. He was one of the few players, I think, who carried his bat through on his debut, the entire innings as an opener. That's one character who was underappreciated. But another guy, I think, we can all mention is Habibul Bashar, how good he was. If you see his record against Pakistan or the big teams, he's got runs against them. So they are also products of school cricket, club cricket. Just imagine they didn't play a lot of fast bowling at that time. They grew into those sort of roles as openers and number three against top sides. They didn't just roll over. They made sure that Bangladesh had a respectable total. I mean, we all look at Bangladesh's totals were poor. They lost all the matches at the start. But these were cricketers: Mohammad Rafiq, Habibul Bashar, Khalid Masood was one. There was obviously Javed Omar, who at the initial stage they held sway. I mean, they didn't just run away from the line of the ball.
If I can just add, Isam, I mean, Javed, then Habibul Bashar, Rafiq. These are the players. They actually allowed Bangladesh to stay in Test cricket because in the initial days it could have been very, very tough, and for them to perform like they did in the face of adversity and against very, very high quality bowling and very high quality batting also. If someone didn't stand up and deliver, then Bangladesh cricket, the pressure was always on. There was all kinds of criticism that was coming from all directions, of the other teams, the ICC, the media. People felt that it was very wrong to give Bangladesh test status, and there was a lot of talk of reviewing and then maybe ban Bangladesh from Test cricket. There was a certain point in time, but because they played like they did, there were other players, other young people who actually had the courage to dream that yes, Test cricket is where we want to go. And then the next generation came, and then the stability came also. So Bangladesh cricket owes a lot to all these players. They actually laid the pillars on which Bangladesh cricket now stands.
So the other important catalyst, as Isam has written about, and I'll link the piece as well, is the Dhaka Premier League, right? So I want you guys to talk about that, the influence of cricketers coming from other countries. And I also think you can touch upon this wonderful bond that Bangladesh and Sri Lanka share over the years. I mean, one can go back to the late 70s, even before Sri Lanka got their test status. And I think they sent a team, they played against Bangladesh in Bangladesh. And then through the years, there have been so many Sri Lankan cricketers who have played in the Dhaka Premier League, players as big as, Ranatunga and others. And also about other teams as well. I mean, players from India, Pakistan, and as you mentioned, players like Richard Illingworth from England. So talk a bit about the influence of international stars coming in.
Yeah, so we can start with the Sri Lanka-Bangladesh bond, which is amazing. I mean, two small nations. Sri Lanka got test status first, but they sent a lot of cricketers and teams. Later, they sent a couple of coaches as well for development. Rabeed Bhai worked with them. Carlton Bernardes and Malcolm Pereira. But before that, they used to there used to be a lot of exchange of footballers. And that's where that's where cricketers also came in. You had some small-time Sri Lanka cricketers used to come who played a few one-dayers and test matches. But then in '95, I think it was in '96, just after the World Cup, Ranatunga and Jayasuriya came. They weren't too successful, but then we started to hear stories about Ranatunga having played way before. He used to not just play the Dhaka Premier League, he used to go in smaller towns as well to play cricket. And I heard a story that in Mymensingh, which is on the northeastern side, it's a town in the northeastern side. It is steeped in cricket history in Bangladesh. There, Arjuna Ranatunga went to play a tournament, final probably. There, the payment wasn't being made, the advance payment. Apparently, he put on one pad and sat. He didn't put on the other pad. He didn't want to go to bat until the organizers paid him the money, the due money. And when they did, he went on to hit a big score. I think he hit Nadir Shah or some spirit from Dhaka for 5 sixes in an over, and he won the game for the side. That's one story I know. But then when they became world champions, they came and they played the league. Jayasuriya came once with Tunga, so that was huge. I've heard this story so many times from Rabeed Bhai and all the others, is of Wasim Akram. Wasim Akram was quite a regular in the 90s. He used to play for Abu Hani. And there was this one big game against Bangladesh Biman, which is the national airliner. They also had a cricket team at that time. And Wasim Akram apparently caused them the game. He clean bowled someone, and the ball had apparently somehow trickled to the boundary and was given a four. And then one batsman from Rajshahi called Shanwaz, he struck Wasim Akram for a last over six, and they won the game. So he was a villain at that time. And then obviously Wasim Akram being Wasim Akram, he came back a couple of seasons later and he played really well for Abu Hani. Heath Streak played for Abu Hani. Gus Logie played for Abu Hani. And one last story that I can tell you is that my cousin used to play a decent level. He was a Premier League cricketer. He was a second, so he was seen as a second wicketkeeper. His name was Atiyar Rahman. So one day he invited some Pakistani cricketers to our house. We used to live in a large joint family, and I met the players. There was Mansoor Akhtar, there was Shahid Nazir. I recognized both, but there was another guy. I really didn't know who he was. He scored a lot of runs that season. Then about a few months later, one morning I saw him playing a test match for Pakistan. It was Imran Farhat. So he played in Dhaka when he was very young. Imran Nazir was brought by some of the other cricketers when he was 14 years old. He used to come and play some league matches, but a lot of table tennis cricket in Dhaka. It's steeped. I mean, there's so many great, awesome cricketers who came and entertained us in our childhood, and it went on. I think even now a lot of cricketers come to the Dhaka Premier League, but it was fun in those days because the quality of cricket was awesome, but at the same time we didn't get to see a lot of international cricketers at that time. So when they came and played for our teams, it was such a big battle. I mean, Ashoka De Silva played in Bangladesh, the leg spinner, the controversial umpire. Bangladeshis hate him. A generation of Bangladeshis will hate him as an umpire, but he did play in Dhaka as far as I know. Yeah, and I heard stories. I even heard from Ranjan Madugale that they used to follow scores here. They used to try and follow score what the Sri Lankans were doing in Dhaka leagues.
Um, I remember just I used to play for a club which actually shared the nets with the club Raman Lamba was playing, and we would finish off, and then his club would come in and start practicing. So once we were done, we would sit behind the nets and watch him bat. Very, very, very different to what our local batsman routine would be in a net practice. And we used to sit there for hours and just watching him. If he's batting, sometimes he would come in and bowl a bit. He would do his fielding drills, his own warm-ups and stuff. And we just by seeing an international player, a test cricketer from a different country, we actually wanted to learn something different. And there were players who were playing for all Dhaka clubs, Dhaka Premier League clubs. All the clubs had foreign players, and they all brought some kind of, different kind of quality. Atula Samarsegara, the Sri Lankan batsman, he was one of the most devastating players in Dhaka League, and he would be batting like a butcher against most teams. Then you had the space bowlers like Graham LeBroy, then Gamage and Simano, and I also remember Sanjeev. Sanjeev Sharma, right?
Yeah, Sanjeev Sharma.
Sanjeev Sharma, Indian pace bowler.
Yes.
Yeah, he made a very big impression. We were students of BKSP at that time, and we were taken to an Asia Cup game, and we were sitting behind the bowlers, the wicket keeper side, and Sanjeev Sharma was bowling, and he took 5 wickets against Pakistan in one of the Asia Cup matches, and he had these big outswingers. So all of us aspiring cricketers who are watching these players, we wanted to actually become like them. In terms
Ravid
of,
bhai,
yeah,
Ravid bhai,
please, yeah.
interrupting you. Tell me one incident. I don't remember it clearly, but didn't Chetan Sharma once come to the airport, supposed to play for one club, and then another club came and took him? Is that true?
I I heard about that. A lot of those things were going on in Dhaka club cricket at that time. Players would be they'll be kidnapped from maybe airports or the hotels they were staying in and made to sign for a rival club. So these things were very much present in football and also sometimes in cricket. Um, our present chairman of selectors, Minhajul Abedin, also tells us a story like that. Like he was playing for either Abahani or Mohammedan, the two bitter rivals. So sometimes the supporters would come and cordon him off. There will be club officials who would be coming in microbuses and get hold of him, take him to a safe house of sorts, keep him there until the signing program starts, and then take him and make him sign for their club. So these were all part of the fun and also the level of interest you can understand by this kind of incidents, that how much people actually adored star players, and how involved club officials were in ensuring that their club had the best players.
The Bangladesh Premier League is so tame in comparison, guys. Come on, you should spice it up a bit more. One thing, I mean, you have mentioned Raman Lamba, but can you talk a little bit more about the impact that his death had? I mean, it came on the cricket field, and this was after he was hit by, where he was fielding at short leg and he was hit, and then he collapsed and then he passed away. I mean, of course, it got attention all over the world, especially in India. But can you talk a bit about the reaction in Bangladesh and how deeply it was mourned?
I wasn't at the match, but I heard that he was hit on the head and was taken to the hospital. I just started working for the Daily Star newspaper in Dhaka. I started my career as a journalist there, and things actually deteriorated for him very quickly. So I went to the hospital where he was, and the first person I saw once I get on the lift was Mehrab Hussain, OP, the batsman who had actually played that shot. So OP was standing there, very shaken, and he was kind of blaming himself for what had happened. Ram Lamba had already got into a coma by that time, and the signs were not very good, and a lot of activities were going on. There was a doctor who had come in, who was flown in from India. The local doctors, they were also trying their level best, and the media was always wanting an update on what the situation was. When he actually got hit and then walked off, nobody could actually feel that in 24 hours time uh, he would be in a coma. So there was shock in the beginning, and then once he passed away, uh, the cricket fraternity, I think if you had gone to the hospital at that time, you would have seen that everyone, um, every club official, everyone who mattered in Bangladesh cricket, they were there. Players, officials, fans, and it was a time of mourning. I mean, his body was taken to the Abani club, and then possibly to the national stadium, if I remember correctly. And you know, uh, people became very very emotional. The players who had played with him, they just couldn't believe that something like that could happen on a cricket field. I think it was the first incident of that kind ever in Bangladesh cricket. One of the Albany club officials, Mr. Jalal Yunus, who is a cricket board director now and also the chairman of the media committee, he was the person who actually drove Raman to the ground on that day, and he told me that he didn't want to come because he had some other commitments in India, but because it was such an important game, the Aboni officials actually requested him and insisted that he come and play just this one match. And because he loved the club and he knew how club cricket, what club cricket was in Dhaka, Raman Lamba actually reluctantly he said, okay, I'll come and play that match. So Mr. Yunus also said that if I hadn't insisted on him coming, maybe this would not have happened. And it was a very difficult time for every one of us.
Yeah, there were so many things that worked against him. I mean, there were apart from all the things that you mentioned and the fact that he was offered a helmet, but then there were just 2 or 3 balls remaining in that over. He said no need, and then of course the most ironical thing is that the ball hit his head and then it popped up and the wicketkeeper caught it. So it was a wicket. And and then there's this story which Siddharth Monga of Cricinfo has wrote long back, and I'm sure others have written too, that the new batsman walked in, Aminul Islam, and when he walked in, he asked Raman Lamba, are you okay? And Raman Lamba was on the ground, and Raman Lamba actually told him that, he said, Bully, main mar gaya, which is like, I'm dead. And it's such a sad sort of story, and of course it affected everyone, and it's something that people remember to this day. Also, I wanted to talk about 2 figures who were extremely crucial. You can maybe add more if they were, but the first one was Gordon Greenidge. We have talked a bit about him, but can you expand on his contribution to the development of the team, and he became a cult figure, of course. He was even offered Bangladesh citizenship, right, after that 97 trophy?
Yeah, I mean, he was offered a lot of things because people actually idolized him as a legendary batsman. Anything West Indian was considered very unique in those times. We grew up on Viv Richards and Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes, all the West Indies fast bowlers. So a West Indian, and that too a legend like Gordon Greenidge coming to Bangladesh, coaching the national team, staying here, that was massive. And when Gordon Greenidge came to Bangladesh, he didn't have a significant coaching background. What he brought was a lot of, Caribbean heart and a lot of, his experience, and he would demonstrate to the players how to bat, how to feel, because he was still very fit at that time. And he would actually show the players that this is how we do it. He could do that at that time because he had just, I think, left cricket for 4 or 5 years, retired from cricket, and then he came to Bangladesh. So that was very, very significant for the players, that the coaches are able to show you how it is done. He even landed a bet with some of the players that he could beat them in a 100-meter sprint. So this is a story that I hear all the time. There's Akram Khan and some of the other guys who were not very quick, and someone said to Gordon that Akram would beat you in a 100-meter sprint, and he took the bet, and he actually won. So So that was the kind of impact Gordon had. He was idolized by the players who were training under him, and he actually made them believe that they could go on win the ICC trophy, make it to the World Cup, because he had played the World Cup. He knows all about it. He told them that he believed that they will play the World Cup, and they believed in that.
After 97, let's talk a bit about that 98 when they had that, what used to be called the Mini World Cup and then became known as the Champions Trophy subsequently. What was the effect of that tournament in Bangladesh? I mean, all the big teams coming there. South Africa won that tournament, and then there were some memorable performances from there. So, and I remember all the stadiums were. I mean, the games were all mostly packed out. So it must have been a big event at that time, right?
It was like having the Olympics in Bangladesh. I felt. I think everyone felt that way. With everyone was there. I remember going with my family to BKSP to watch a Bangladesh England practice match. England had the Holyoke. Adam Holyoke was the captain. Alex Stewart and all those guys. So it was that team that won in Sharjah, I think later on that year or something. But yeah, so that was one tournament which started off with a bang. Neil Johnson and Murray Goodwin, they suddenly had a following in Bangladesh. There were so many things happening. I remember South Africa was playing against New Zealand, I think, in the quarterfinal, and the match was, there was a rain delayed start, and John D. Rhodes walked on his hand while warming up, and that just, he had the whole ground eating of his hands. Like everyone was crazy about these cricketers. I remember one guy going to the Pakistan West Indies game with a huge poster of Shahid Afridi. He lasted, I think, 6 balls or 8 balls and got out. And then these were interesting teams. I think none of them, I don't think any of them sent their full teams. West Indies sent a team that had Philo Wallace and Clayton Lambert opening, Nixon McLean, these guys. Brian Lara was playing. They played the final with South Africa. South Africa also had some young sort of guys like Jack Ellis and all these guys around. Steve Elworthy, he played that tournament. He wasn't that young. Australia didn't have a really good team. They got hammered by Sachin in that game, 140, and then Sachin came and took 4 wickets. I heard a story that apparently Sachin Tendulkar had a huge plate of biryani in the break, and then he was not supposed to go to the field early on, but then he just went and took 4 wickets. You know, Australia were in a good, they made a good start, I thought. And yeah, I mean, India-West Indies game started. I remember Philo Wallace hitting Javagal Srinath the first ball for a 6. I had never seen such a thing. And then the final was West Indies, South Africa, obviously South Africa winning that game. I don't remember too much about that game, but obviously tickets were hard to come by. And that was one big sort of week in my life. I wanted to go to the stadium every day. It was not possible to go in every day, but I would hang out outside with my friends, with my cousins, trying to get in. It was, you see these moments in other sports as well when sports goes big. I mean, I've seen sports movies where, and I could relate to those things where kids would hang out outside looking for the stars. I went to the team hotels to see these players. And that was, I mean, I wasn't the only one. There were 10, 15,000 people turning up outside the team hotel every day, trying to grab an autograph, trying to get a photo with one player or the other. It was crazy. I think those were the trigger points where, you know, cricket completely took over our sort of took over our lives. Some of us who loved cricket in the early 90s, but then when these players started to come and play in Dhaka, I think that was really smart of the BCB at that time to make sure that these tournaments came to Bangladesh. There were some odd matches as well. There was a World 11 versus Asia 11 match. I think you guys remember Michael Bevan's innings. It was unofficial, but it was a great knock. That game, I felt for the first time in my life that I might be squeezed to death, because there were about 100,000 people at the Bangabandhu Stadium. Honestly, that was, I think, it was a huge rush. I never felt such a rush for any cricket match. It was a cricket next sort of ICC event, something. It was that game. I am sure you guys remember Mark Waugh played, Tendulkar played, Wasim Akram. It was a huge game, and there was a huge rush for that game. So these things, yeah, they stick to our memory. I mean, these matches. I think I can tell you more about these matches than any other matches that I've even played in.
You said you watched all these games, but Bangladesh themselves weren't playing in that tournament. So talk a bit about your allegiances and how you decided who to support, or were you totally a neutral? How did that happen?
Oh no! I was Australia all the way. So we all picked teams in the early '90s. Bangladesh took a little bit of a time to get our attention. They were always, we used to follow them, but obviously with cable TV coming to Bangladesh, we started to have our own teams. I think Rabeed Bhai is a well-known West Indies aficionado. Uh, he loves the West Indies. He's toured the West Indies as well, but his love for West Indies starts from the 80s. For me, it was always Australia, and I couldn't understand why people were so crazy about India-Pakistan matches or any other team. I thought Australia was the real team. They had Shane Warne, Dean Jones, they were my hero, David Boone, McDermott, McGrath. So I was Australian. People hated me for it. I had friends who supported India, Pakistan. Some friends supported West Indies. So the three major ones were India, Pakistan, and West Indies. West Indies was obviously the cool one. India and Pakistan were the emotional sort of connection, or people felt something with them. For me, it was most about how Australia played, how the color yellow, that also appealed to me, I think. But the way they played, I loved that. And as I was telling you, that this tournament was sort of a fantasy for all of us friends, because all our supported teams were there. Unfortunately, Bangladesh wasn't playing, but we understood that Bangladesh wasn't good enough, and we didn't want Bangladesh to be hurt badly in that tournament. So we thought, okay, let these big guys play. We get to see them. We didn't understand too many things at that time. We just felt that, okay, these great teams are here. Bangladesh doesn't need to get trampled here. We're just going to watch South Africa. We're going to watch Australia, India play. That was probably how we felt.
Yeah, I mean, my memories would be that of a reporter running all around Dhaka trying to cover as many practice sessions as possible. So I went to this training of the England team, and Graham Hick was a big draw at that time, because Hick was doing all sorts of, he's breaking record after record in fastest cricket, and now he's here. And I wanted to interview him, and someone told me that you need to speak to the media manager. And Brian Murgatroyd, who later become the ICC's media manager in Australia, is also a very good friend now. But at that time, Brian was the England team's media manager. And that was the first time I actually realized that there was a thing called a media manager for a cricket team. And I thought, well, what a good job to have, going around the world and staying beside all these great cricketers. So Brian was very accommodating, and he gave me that interview with Graham Hick. And I went to a few West Indies training sessions also, tried to get Brian Lara, but Lara was off limits to most journalists, apart from very few who actually knew previously. And but it was a lot of fun seeing all these exciting international cricketers all at the same time in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, and then going to the grounds in the afternoon to see those day-night matches. And there were some very fine matches in that tournament. Support-wise, I mean, I obviously wanted the West Indies to do well, but the Bangladeshi public, there was a very big Pakistan fan base because of the players they had. Wasim Akram obviously was a very big draw, and then there were the others who actually attracted the cricket fans a lot. And more or less, people here wanted one of the Asian sides to go on and win the tournament, but the final was played between West Indies and South Africa. So South Africa didn't have a lot of support in that match. It was all West Indies. Eventually, they lost. But all in all, that tournament, actually, it was one of the best organized tournament for a country that still hadn't had this status. And from a journalistic point of view, it was a great tournament to cover, because interviews were far easier to get then, and also the players were maybe more accessible in many ways. And that tournament actually gave Bangladesh a lot of people in Bangladesh that yes, cricket, even by hosting international standard events, you can do a lot of good to the country's cricket, because players actually see those great stars in front of you, see exciting matches, great quality matches, and they want to be like that. And when you have a tournament where all the top teams in the world are playing, it actually resonates all around the country. That's exactly something that happened with that tournament.
Yeah, it also tells us how, the recent trend of all the big tournaments are being held only in the established nations, and how events like this, if cricket is actually adventurous and ambitious, can make a huge difference to a country that is still not playing. Like for today, I mean, I'm saying if they would go and host an event in Nepal, for instance, may not be a big Champions Trophy. It can just be a tri-series or a quadrangular. You never know the effect that could have on the future of cricket in Nepal, or on the future of cricket in some other country. But coming to just moving on from 98 to 99 to a tournament that Bangladesh actually played, and talk a bit about the expectations before the 99 World Cup, and about Bangladesh beat Scotland, and of course the famous win against Pakistan. Talk about how that tournament was consumed, and how big was it in in Bangladesh's journey towards Test status.
That tournament I thought was that. I mean, the World Cup. No one really expected a lot from the World Cup, to be honest. But I just felt that when they were going to the World Cup, they were trying to be well prepared for it. They went 1 month ahead and tried to play it against a number of the county sides in one-day games. They planned well, but there were a lot of things that were happening. The Gordon Greenwich thing was difficult. He didn't see eye to eye with the board president at that time. The players were under a bit of pressure because they had to prove, and there was a number of older players in the side. It was led by Amrul Islam, who was one of the senior players. There was Farooq Ahmed, there was Akram Khan, and there were also some younger players. But it was a pretty good team, and they were going down easily to other teams. But Scotland, Minhajul Abidin, he rescued them from a really difficult situation. And then Pakistan game was, well, some people said that Pakistan took it easily, but you would if you had won all the group games, and then you face Bangladesh, and they played it like little brother, big brother, whatever. They just kept on saying it after they lost. They ramped it up, but it was a good day of cricket. I remember everyone contributing with the bat. But the larger impact of that win was obviously beating Pakistan. It brought the world's attention, and the government, the Bangladesh government, they ramped up the status push, the full membership push that the BCB started to have. And it was not a really big surprise that within a year, and things were moving so fast at that time, one day status, test status, they were all coming quickly. The players had to adjust quickly as well, but um, I felt that momentum was beautifully handled by those who ran cricket at that time. And honestly, the World Cup was used very well. The expat communities came from Europe and UK to watch the matches. And I recently went to Northampton during the World Cup to have a sort of a revisit to that game. And I spoke to a lot of locals, some Northampton regulars, and they remember a great day. They say that probably before the T20 juggernaut hit Northampton or England in that big way, that was the game. That was the game where they drew the largest crowd, and they have a huge photograph, a wide-angle photograph of that day, when I think 14,000 or 15,000 people crammed into the small city, so small town, small ground. It was people remember that day, like 31st May 1999. Even I'm a Bangladeshi, I would remember, but someone from Northamptonshire, where the match was held, yeah, they haven't forgotten about that game.
Rabeed, were you there at the game? How do you remember it?
No, I was working for the Daily Star at that time, and we were following the matches from Dhaka. One of our reporters, I think, was there in the UK. Um, I mean, before going to the tournament, I think the realistic ambition was to beat Scotland and maybe one or two good individual performances here and there. Um, to be honest, if we hadn't beaten Pakistan in that tournament, I don't think Test status would have come that early. Um, that tournament actually changed Bangladesh cricket forever. And that particular win against Pakistan. Um, I remember we were, before the start of the match, there was one of our male colleagues who actually landed a bet. He was so sure that Pakistan was going to win that match. He said, okay, if we go in and win this match, if Bangladesh wins this match, I'm going to do a strip dance here in the office. And we all thought, okay, so it's impossible. So we just had a laugh and things like that. And then things started happening very differently to what everyone had anticipated. And Bangladesh actually were in a position where we were very likely to win the match. And we won it. And then, you can understand how that guy actually felt once it was all done. We said that now you have to, you have to keep your commitment and do what you wanted to. And he started, and then we stopped him, anyways. So that was something that, so that was something I'll remember forever. And but the win actually couldn't have come at a better time. Because if we had only gone there and beaten Scotland and came back, well, it would have been like any other tournament, international tournament. But the push for the Test status would not have come. That I'm pretty sure about.
Getting to the Test status and getting to that game, I mean, in 2000, Bangladesh played their first test. It was against India in Dhaka, and started off so promisingly. Aminul Islam, Bulbul, wasn't he? Yeah, he got 100 on their Bangladesh's test debut, and Bangladesh actually scored 400 on their test debut, which many Bangladesh teams through the 2000s would have taken at any point of time, I think, given their batting struggles. But they scored 400. They went on to lose the game, of course. Sunil Joshi ended up getting quite a few wickets. Talk a bit about your memories of that game and how big it was. I remember the ground was pretty packed. It was held, of course, in a poignant note. It was held at the Bangabandhu National Stadium, Bangabandhu being the father of the nation and the first test being held there. Must have been a tremendous occasion, right?
It was. I mean, there's a lot of fanfare and a very colorful build-up to the entire event. And then it started. I think if we look back, for the Bangladesh players, for the first maybe couple of days, it was like they were playing a Dhaka Premier Division Cricket League match, and it only probably the realization dawned on them that it was in fact a test match, and they were actually playing a major side like India, maybe on the third or fourth day, because when you toss batting fast, 400 plus runs, you should be on cloud nine. But then Test cricket is not about one innings, and the Bangladesh team actually got that lesson pretty quickly.
Isam, any thoughts about that game? Memories? Where were you?
I was in the stands for the first 3 days, I remember. Probably had school or something in the last 2 days. But one thing I clearly remember is watching Ganguly bat in the nets. It was his first test as captain, and he was timing the ball so well. It was He was playing some of the fast bowlers. I think Zahir Khan was around, Venkatesh Prasad was around, Ajit Agarkar. He was batting in the nets, and I was just behind him, holding the grill and watching him bat. You know, the time he had to play all these fast bowlers. I remember he was bashing all the spinners as well. And the test match itself was interesting because Bangladesh held India up for a while. I remember that one sort of passage of play on the second or third day when Tendulkar, Dravid, Ganguly, they all fell quickly to Bangladesh's spin, and the catching was really good around the bat as well. Some of them went on to play Test cricket. Rajin Saleh was a sub. He took one of the catches, I think, of Tendulkar, and then he went on to play Test cricket for Bangladesh. It was an interesting time for one guy called Bikash Ranjan Das, who later became Mahbubur Rahman. He was a left-arm quick. He's a one-test wonder. He never played test matches later. He was injured, and then he lost his form. But he played that game. I think he got 1 wicket in that game. It was a pretty quick bowler. And yeah, I mean that game, I remember it was such a huge occasion. The Prime Minister came and opened the game. There are photos of that with Saurav Ganguly and Naimur Rahman being the first Test captain. It's such a historic occasion. I mean, those were the days. I mean, really, I think that sparked everything in us, me, Rabeed Bhai, or whoever has been with Bangladesh cricket for so long. We were born out of those sort of days.
I think for me, another very important factor was that one of my classmates, one of my friends, he was actually captaining the Bangladesh team in the first Test match. So it was quite, we were very, very proud, obviously, but up to a certain point, it felt, it was unbelievable that we had actually been to the same academy together, and now he's the Test captain. Very, very proud at that moment. And as the Test wore on, Naimur actually went on to take 6 wickets in the Indian innings. But then Sunil Joshi, who was our bowling coach until the World Cup, he played an decisive innings, and then also took the wickets that changed the complexion of the game. And whenever we got the chance during the tours, we always reminded Sunil Bhai that you're enemy number one, because of you, when all the other major players, the big players, the Davids, the Tendulkars, they all had more or less failed in that match, but out of nowhere you came in and you played that innings, and you went on to beat Bangladesh, and we had a good laugh about it. But
he made up for it by coaching your spinners. So come on, you can forgive him.
Yes, absolutely.
So a quick one before I get to the final part. Isam, you spoke about Ganguly. Can you talk a bit about, was he, how big was he in Bangladesh? I mean, of course, he's darling in Calcutta, and probably Calcutta's first big cricketer, and of course went on to be captain, and he's close to, second only to God in Calcutta and Eden Gardens. But I'm interested to know how he is perceived across the border, and especially given the Bengali connection.
Oh yeah, the Bengali connection really makes him popular in Bangladesh. He's one of the most popular cricketers from India in Bangladesh. He is very well received here. I think he did 2011 World Cup. I think he did some sort of 100-day program. I remember him being the chief guest there. And then just whenever he's come to play in Bangladesh, he's been very, very popular here, and when people love him.
Nowadays, he's very popular, but he's popular among the section of a population who maybe doesn't even know his cricketing identity, because he's the host of a very popular TV show. It's called Dadagiri, and there's a lot of elderly Bangladeshi female population, and also a lot of people identify Ganguly to that particular program, and he is very, very popular. very popular one. But those, yeah, Isam is very correct. Those who have followed cricket, and to them, he's a symbol of Bengali pride, you can say, and many people actually can identify their heritage and their culture with Sourav Ganguly. When he was playing for India, whenever he was doing people in Bangladesh would be very, very happy for him, and he's still considered, the Dada, and whenever he comes to Bangladesh, whenever he's here, um, he's adored by cricket followers.
All right, so let me come to the final part of it, which is a challenge for you two, which I'm sure you will pass very easily. I'm looking to for you to come up with dream Bangladesh 11, and by choosing cricketers who did not play Test cricket. So they could have played one-day cricket, but people who did not play Test cricket. It's also a way to introduce us to some of the very good cricketers of that time who we never saw play. And do you want to take a shot at it, Isam, and maybe Rabeed can then come in after that?
Yeah, let me read it out. I would pick Jahangir Alam. He was a wicketkeeper. He was a wicketkeeper batsman who used to open in the I think he opened in the '94 ICC. He was a very aggressive batsman. He was a good wicketkeeper. He would open with Atar Ali Khan. Obviously, Atar Ali Khan, the first man of the match. I think one of the first man of the match award winners in Bangladesh. And he was such a class, elegant cricketer, wearing a hat, always had things in control. Number three.
Wait. Let me just stop you there. As I need you to expand a bit on this, because as of now, everybody who, if you say the name Atar Ali Khan, from anybody who listens to cricket commentary, they will have various reactions that go from ridicule to comedy to whatever, because Atar has his own style and sometimes he ends up repeating himself. But talk a bit about him as a cricketer. I remember him being a very stylish bat, and tell us a bit more about him.
Yeah, Atar Ali Khan was a right-handed opener. Back in the day, he debuted in 1988 for Bangladesh. He was very upright as an opening batsman. I remember him a bit of a Graham Gooch in his batting, and he was always very patient with all the stroke makers around him. But he had some class strokes. If you look at YouTube videos of old Bangladesh matches in Sharjah, you would see him start off well against Manoj Prabhakaran and Pakistan attacks. He used to bowl medium pace as well. But one thing that always stood out about him that I really admired, and I tell him sometimes, that he was very classy cricketer. He used to have his, he was not unkempt at all. He used to wear his the wide brimmed hat, and he was always shaved and always cool. You could tell from a distance it was Atar Ali Khan. He was very tall as well, one of the tall batsmen in Bangladesh. So as I said, Atar Ali Khan would be opening with Jahangir Alam, who's a wicketkeeper batsman from Narayanganj, just on the outskirts of Dhaka. That's where Jahangir was from. Number 3 would be Abdul Halim Chaudhary. Jewel was his nickname. People know him as Shahid Jewel. Shahid is the means he's a martyr. He died in the 1971 war, and he was a very good batsman in the 1960s during Rakibul Hassan's time. And they say that he was one of those who could have played for Pakistan as well in those days. He was a very attacking batsman. He was a top order batsman. Number 4 would be Minhajul Abidin, the current chief selector, who probably the greatest Bangladeshi batsman never to have played Test cricket in the Test era. He missed out even though he was playing cricket at that time. Number 5 would be my mentor, but he was a great batsman. He was a very good all-round cricketer in the 80s and 90s. His name is Rafiqul Alam. He now has moved to the US. He used to be the chief selector a few years ago as well. Salim Shahid would be my number 6. He was also another very, well-organized batsman of the middle order, but he never got to play for Bangladesh in an official capacity. Number 7 would be Yusuf Rahman. Yusuf Rahman is popularly known as Yusuf Babu. He was, so when the MCC came for the first time in 1976-77, he scored 64 batting at number 7. It was a great knock, and he is one of those sort of legendary cricketers in our country from that era, from the 70s. Again, Jahangir Shah Badshah from that same era, but he's played for a long time. And he's one of those very talented individuals, cricket, football. He was a good fast bowler, he was a good coach as well. Sheikh Salahuddin, I think someone Rabeed Bhai knows personally. He passed away a few years ago. He was a very good off spinner. Sakleen Mushtaq really praised him in the, I think it was in the 99, should be one of those Asia Cups, 98 Asia Cup or something, or 97 Asia Cup in Sri Lanka where he played. He played very well. He was an off spinner, but he later passed away. But before he passed away, he was coach to Mehdi Hassan Miraz, the off spinner from Khulna. And then I have two left-arm fast bowlers, Anisur Rahman, who bowled well in one of those Sark trophies. He became my hero at that time, but then Tendulkar dismantled him in the 95 Asia Cup. And finally, Morshad Ali Khan, he's an umpire now, but he was also a left-arm quick. In the 98 Coca-Cola Trophy in India, he took the wicket of Saurav Ganguly. So he's one of those fast bowlers that I really admired. That would be my 11.
Did you just pick 11 without a single left-arm spinner?
Yeah, because all of them played for Bangladesh, and I couldn't find a good left-arm spinner who didn't play for Bangladesh Test cricket at that time. I think Mohammad Rafiq and Inamul Haq were there, but I got lazy. I think I couldn't find one.
Rabeed, would you largely agree, or would you have any disagreements here?
Well, slight disagreements. I actually chose to pick players who I have been lucky enough to see a bit of. And my number one would be Harunur Rashid Litton. He was an opening batsman. Never actually made his mark in the national team, but he did represent the Bangladesh A side and also representative sides against teams like the Hyderabad Blues, then MCC, and all those representative sides that used to come and tour Bangladesh in the late 80s, 90s, and he was pretty prolific. He scored a lot of runs. He looked the part. He had his way of scoring runs, and wasn't ever tied down. So I would pick him as one of my openers. Then Jahangir Alam, who was also maybe not very pleasing to the eye, but he was very effective, scored a lot of runs, and kept wicket. Nehal Hasnain happens to be a cousin of mine also, but he was a classy batsman and was a prominent feature of the Bangladesh side in the 80s. He would score a lot of runs in domestic cricket, played in the ICC trophy, played for the national team, and looked the part whenever he batted. The present chairman of selectors, Minhajul Abedin, always found a way to score runs, could never tie him down, and he was always scoring runs. Throughout his career, he scored runs. He rarely had a off form or an off season. Atar Ali Khan, very elegant, but I remember him for his straight sixes. Atar, a lot of people might not know, but he actually hit some very, very good over boundaries. And that was one of the reasons people used to come in and try and watch him, because he would be elegant and also he'd clear the boundary. Yusuf Rahman Babu, by the time I saw him, he had already more or less retired, but he did come and play in weekend matches, Friday matches, special matches, and you could actually see his talent. He was a very, very elegant batsman. He could bowl. He could field. He was one of the best fielders of his time, and he was all in all a very modern cricketer to have played at that time. Rafiqul Alam, who Isam has also kept in his team. Rafiqul Alam, I remember him from one of the matches against Bangladesh was playing against a combined Pakistan 11, which had Imran Khan, Wasim Akram, Mohsin Kamal. And they had come under the banner of the Umar Qureshi 11. and that game was televised on Bangladesh television. And when all the other batsmen had fallen, Rafiqul Alam had gone in and scored 80 odds and hit 14 fours in that innings, and he actually thrashed everyone, including the great Imran Khan. So that is a lasting memory. Then Jahangir Shah Badshah, a very, very good opening opening bowler. He had skills that none of his peers had. He could move the ball both ways, had a lovely run up and action, and he could do tricks with the ball that I didn't see anyone of that era perform like that. Ghulam Nausher Prince played in the mid 80s and 90s, and he was probably the quickest bowler of his time. And he played a good number of international one-day matches for Bangladesh, and he was a rarity at that point because he was bowling quick, and he commanded respect from international players, whoever he was bowling to. Anisur Rahman could swing the ball both ways, was a fine bowler, but actually couldn't translate his talent into international cricket, but had all the makings of a good bowler. And my last player would be Sheikh Salahuddin, an off spinner. He didn't get that many opportunity, but whenever he was playing against international teams, whatever I saw of him, he commanded respect, and he would be bowling. He'd be changing his flights, his trajectories, and trying all the other things. He actually worked with a number of international bowlers and honed his skill. So he was pretty decent. So these are my 11 for the.
All right. So very interesting. This was fantastic. A lovely insight into part of Bangladesh cricket that I had very little idea of. Thank you, Isam. Thank you, Rabeed. You guys were wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sid, for hosting this. I mean, I really wanted to tell these stories, and you are probably the perfect person to, to tell to, and someone who can really present these stories so well. And obviously, Rabeed Bhai, thanks to you for finding time in your busy schedule to do this.
Sid, it was an absolute pleasure, and it was great actually talking on a subject that we rarely get the time to look back on. And thank you, Isam, for your inputs, and this has also enlightened me a lot because we don't actually look back that much, but from time to time we need to, and thank you very much for.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues, not just, I mean, throughout the subcontinent as well as, you see a lot being written about the present, but then not much being mythologized or spoken about the past. And, even in terms of literature or in terms of documentaries and movies, we are far behind when it comes to documenting our history compared to, say, other countries in the West. So this is our little attempt on this podcast, and to try and find these topics to talk about. And thank you for joining. And hopefully you can join again at some point to talk about other aspects of Bangladesh cricket. Maybe we should do a whole podcast on left-arm spinners, and Isam can be the star of that show.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Thank you. Good night. Take
Good
care.
night.
He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India are home. Lords goes wild.